Welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Kele Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader. Someone just blindsided you in a meeting. Maybe they questioned your judgment in front of the executive team. Perhaps they interrupted you for the third time, dismissing your point before you could finish. Or maybe they delivered a thinly veiled critique disguised as feedback. And now every eye in the room is on you. Your heart is racing. Your mind is scrambling for the perfect comeback. And in that moment, every instinct is screaming at you to respond right now. But here's what I know about you. You didn't get to where you are by being reactive. You got here by being strategic. And today, I'm going to show you how to use the most powerful communication tool you already possess. One that costs nothing, requires no scripts, and will absolutely change the way you command a room once you learn to use it with intention. I'm, of course, talking about the strategic pause. And when you practice the skill and use it deliberately in the moments that matter, you won't need to defend yourself. You'll take control of the conversation on your terms. So let's talk about it. Welcome back to Communicate to Lead, the podcast for women leaders who are high impact and high performing, but find themselves fighting for the authority that should already be theirs. I'm your host, Kele Belton, communication and leadership coach and speaker, and I'm here to help you advance to senior leadership without sacrificing your well-being. Today's episode is all about high-stakes presence, specifically how to handle workplace aggression without diminishing your authority. You're going to learn how to use silence as your strategic advantage. And if you've ever felt like you need to have the perfect response ready in the moment, or you've replayed conversations in your head over and over wishing you'd said something different, this episode, my friend, is for you. Let's dive in. Before we get to the framework, let me clarify what I mean by workplace aggression, because I'm not talking about someone yelling at you or throwing things in a meeting. Workplace aggression is any behavior designed to undermine your authority, destabilize your position, or force you into a defensive posture. Being interrupted repeatedly, having your judgment questioned publicly, someone dismissing your perspective before you finished. Thinly veiled critiques disguised as feedback, attempts to reposition your work as flawed when it's not. This isn't about healthy debate. This is about someone testing whether they can knock you off your center. And most of the time, it's subtle enough that if you call it out, you run the risk of looking too sensitive. But here's what I want you to understand. Just because it's subtle doesn't mean it's not aggression. And you deserve strategies to handle it. Here's what happens in those high-pressure moments. Someone challenges you publicly, your nervous system kicks into fight or flight mode, adrenaline floods your body, and suddenly you're operating from your most primitive brain, the part designed to protect you from physical threats, not navigate complex workplace dynamics. So we react. Maybe you over-explain, defending your position with tons of data. Maybe you match their energy, thinking that if you don't fight fire with fire, you'll look weak. Or perhaps you shrink, backpedaling or over-apologizing when you shouldn't. And here's what you need to understand. When you rush to answer, you aren't being efficient. You're paying what I call the peacekeeper tax. You're trying to de-escalate a situation you should be commanding. You're choosing comfort over authority, and in senior leadership, that's an expensive choice. Real leadership is about demonstrating composure under pressure. It's about showing the room you can hold space for tension without being consumed by it. Because the person who can tolerate silence in a high-stakes moment is the person who controls the room. Before we dive deeper, I would appreciate your help with something. If you are finding value in this podcast, if these conversations are helping you see your leadership differently or giving you strategies you can actually use, would you take 2 minutes to leave a review? Every review helps women leaders find this show. When you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, it signals to the algorithm that this content is valuable. And that means another woman who's struggling with the same challenges you have faced has a better chance of finding these strategies. Your review doesn't need to be long. Even a few sentences about what resonated with you, that's enough to make a difference. So let's talk about how to use the pause strategically. I'm going to walk you through what I call the POISE, P-O-I-S-E method, a 5-step framework for neutralizing workplace aggression and reclaiming your authority. POISE stands for pause, observe, inhale, signal, engage. Here is the P in POISE, which stands for pause. When someone challenges you or attempts to undermine your authority, it's time for you to pause. Not a hesitation, not a second guessing, but a deliberate, intentional pause. This is the moment where you refuse to be pulled into their tempo. You are creating space between their provocation and your response. And you are signaling to everyone in the room that you are unfazed. So how long do you need to pause? Well, you're not going to like it, but the answer is for 3 to 10 seconds. 3 seconds feels like an eternity in a tense meeting. 10 seconds? That's a power move that says, I'm considering whether this even warrants a response. 3 to 10 seconds. And then the next one is the O in POISE, which stands for observe. While you are pausing, observe what's happening in the room. Look at the person who challenged you. Really look at them, not in anger, not in defensiveness, with calm, steady eye contact that says, I see you. Then observe the room. What's the energy? Who's leaning in? Who's uncomfortable? This grounds you. It pulls you out of your reactive nervous system and back into your strategic thinking. And it shifts the dynamic. When you're observing instead of reacting, you are demonstrating executive presence. That's O. So here's the I in POISE, which stands for inhale. Now it's time to take a deep breath. I mean, a real deep breath. This is psychological. When you inhale deeply, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the part that calms you down and allows you to think clearly. One deep breath can shift you from reactive mode to responsive mode. And sometimes it's okay if you need 3 or 5 breaths. Take as many as you need. This is your moment. You are owning the room. And here's the beautiful part. No one needs to know that you are doing it. From the outside, you look composed and calm. On the inside, you are regulating your nervous system so you can lead from a point of clarity instead of emotion. And this brings us to the S in POISE, which stands for signal. Before you speak, signal your position non-verbally. Ground your posture. Keep your hands visible on the table. This shows you have nothing to hide and you are not defensive. Do not tilt your head or soften your look to look approachable. This is not the time to make them comfortable. This is the time to hold your ground. Maintain a neutral, steady eye contact. Not aggressive, not warm, simply neutral. What you're doing in this moment is you are assessing, not reacting. So stay still. Don't move towards the challenge and don't retreat from it. These signals communicate confidence and control. They tell the room and the person who challenged you that you're about to respond on your terms, not theirs. And finally, the last step in POISE is E, which stands for engage. Now you are ready to speak. You've paused, you've observed, you've inhaled, you've signaled, and now we finally get to engaging and you getting to speak. But you are not defending yourself. You're not explaining. You are engaging strategically. Your response could be one of the following. I understand your perspective. However, I'm moving forward with this approach because the data supports it. We can discuss the implementation after the meeting. Or you could say, that's one interpretation. Let me clarify the strategic intent behind this decision. And here's another one you can try. I hear your concern. I'm confident in this direction, and here's why. You are not matching the aggression when you use these examples. You are not shrinking. You are asserting your position with calm authority. You've neutralized the attempt to destabilize you, and now you're redirecting the conversation back to the substance on your terms. And there you have it, the 5-step poise method. But here's what you want to keep in mind. You're not going to master the strategic pause in your next high-stakes meeting if you haven't trained it. It takes practice. So let me walk you through how to build the skill incrementally so that you can implement it with strategy and with confidence. Step 1, start with low-stakes practice. You can't master the strategic pause in the middle of a high-pressure executive meeting. You practice it in lower-stakes situations first. Try this. The next time someone asks you a question, even if it's an easy one, pause for 3 full seconds before you answer. Count to 3 in your head, then respond. Do this in everyday situations and interactions, in one-on-ones, in casual conversations. You are training your nervous system to tolerate the discomfort of silence so that when the stakes are high, the pause feels natural to you. That's step 1. Step 2, identify your physical tells. Most of us have physical reactions when we feel challenged. Maybe your shoulders tense. Maybe your jaw clenches. Maybe you start talking really, really fast. Get to know your tells. Get to know what your body does when you are under pressure, because once you can recognize that, you can interrupt the reaction. So the next time you are in a contentious conversation, pay attention to your body. Where are you holding the tension? When you start to notice these patterns, you can use them as a signal to pause and reset. That's step 2. Here's step 3. Prepare your go-to phrases. One of the reasons we react instead of responding is because we don't have the language ready to speak when we are challenged. So prepare your language in advance. Have 3 to 5 go-to phrases you can pull from. Here's a first example. Let me finish my point, and then I'd love to hear your perspective. Here's another. That's a fair question. Here's the thinking behind this decision. And a third one, I'm happy to discuss this further offline. For now, here's what we're moving forward with. These phrases give you the structure you need so you're not starting from scratch in the heat of the moment in those high-pressure conversations. So I'm sure at this point you have some questions and maybe some concerns about using the pause. One concern I can imagine is, won't silence make me look uncertain? I've gotten this question before from clients. No. Silence makes you look composed. It signals that you're thoughtful, not impulsive. Think about the executives you admire. They don't rush to fill every silence. They take their time. They think things through. That's what makes their words carry weight. Here's another concern. You might be thinking, what if the pause makes the tension worse? And here is what you need to think about, my friend. Tension doesn't escalate because of a few seconds of silence. It escalates because of reactivity. When you react defensively, you are pouring fuel on the fire. When you pause, you're refusing to engage with the aggression, and that actually diffuses it. Let me share a quick story about a client. We'll call her Sarah. She's a director at a tech company, and she had a peer, let's call him Dan, who consistently challenged her in leadership meetings. He'd interrupt her mid-sentence and try to position his idea as superior to hers. Sarah's default was to over-explain. The more she explained, the more Dan would poke holes in her thinking. When Sarah and I first started working together recently, I introduced her to the P.O.I.S.E method. And the next time Dan interrupted her in a meeting, Sarah paused. She looked at him calmly for 5 seconds. And then she said, I understand your perspective, Dan. However, I'm moving forward with this approach because the data supports it. We can discuss the implementation offline. The room went absolutely quiet. Dan didn't have a rebuttal. And the VP nodded and said, let's move forward with Sarah's approach. Guess what? Sarah felt like she had just gained a superpower. The pause had given her back control. She wasn't defending. She was deciding how to engage. And that was how she reclaimed her leadership power. When you use the strategic pause, you're doing something profound. You're refusing to accept the premise that you need to defend yourself. And most workplace aggression is designed to destabilize you. It's a test. Someone trying to see if they can knock you off your center or force you into a defensive posture. When you react immediately, when you over-explain or match their aggression, you are essentially accepting the premise of the test. You are signaling that their challenge has merit and that you are unsure of yourself. But when you pause, when you take those 3 to 10 seconds to think about your response, you are signaling the exact opposite. You are essentially saying, I'm secure in my position. I don't need to rush. I'll engage when I'm ready. That is leadership. Let me connect this to something I talk about often. The difference between reacting from your role and leading from authority. When you react, you're defending your role, your title, your right to make decisions. But when you pause and engage strategically, you're leading from personal authority. You're demonstrating that your power doesn't come from your title. It comes from your presence, your composure, and your ability to command a room without force. That's what elevates you from middle management to senior leadership. So here's what I invite you to do this week. Practice the pause. Start small. In your next meeting, before you answer a question, pause for 3 full seconds. Notice what happens. And if you'd like personal support while you work on your leadership skills this year, I'd love to work with you. I offer complimentary leadership strategy calls where we'll create your strategic leadership roadmap to get you to senior leadership. Click the link in the show notes to schedule your call. And now I have a major announcement. To help you stay in leadership mode and keep you on track all week, starting February 2nd, I'm adding to the podcast schedule. Every Monday, I'll drop a 5-minute Monday Momentum Shorty episode. One unfiltered strategy to set your tone, followed by our deep dive episodes every Thursday. This is all about giving you the high stakes tools you need to hit your 2026 goals without the fluff. And that is a wrap. But before we wrap, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to have all the answers in the moment. You don't need to be the fastest thinker. What you need is the ability to stay grounded when the pressure's on, because that's what leadership looks like. The strategic pause isn't about hesitation, it's about intention. And when you lead with intention, you, my friend, command the room. Thank you for being here. Share this episode with another woman in leadership who needs to hear this. Until next Thursday, my friend, I am Kele, reminding you that great communication is the foundation of inspiring leadership. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember to communicate to lead.